Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie and today I'd like to touch about sculpting miniature food. Now why, you might ask? Well, if you've been around my channel for a while, you might know that I used to do a lot of miniature food. In fact, the prime time of my YouTube channel was when I was doing miniature food. So yeah, I just threw that out of the window because I wanted to move on. But for me, miniature food really was a phase where I learned how to sculpt. So I don't say that miniature food as in is not an art form in itself, because it absolutely is, and I'm going to show you some great artists who do solely miniature food. Out of the question, miniature food is an art form, but for me it was always lacking some meaning, and I think I just got bored after a time. But in retrospect, miniature food really was my way of learning how to sculpt, and now that I am a grown, mature, old artist, sort of, I better understand why miniature food was such a great way for me to start and learn how to sculpt. I'm going to explain you how, and then maybe you might be interested in learning how to sculpt miniature food to start learning how to sculpt, if that's something you're interested in, because if not, then that's fine too. If you're just here to watch, that's great. That's also great. So from what I've gathered on the internet, usually when you learn how to sculpt, you start with a human figure. So I'm not completely sure because I didn't go to art school, not really. I just had 1 year in art university. That doesn't really count. It was in France. It was crappy. Anyway, basically when you want to learn how to sculpt and you searched on the internet, yes, I did that. Girls gotta improve. So yeah, I did search just how to sculpt without specifying what. And usually the thing you find most is human figure. It's the same with drawing, really. When you want to learn how to draw, then it's faces and human figure. It's humans, 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 humans everywhere. Well, if you're just a bit like me and you just don't care at all for the human figure and for humans in general, then it's just not going to be something that you're interested in. And miniature food just might be. It might not, but it might. I just stumbled into miniature food by chance, so it wasn't on purpose. But again, I think it's a great way to start how to sculpt, and I'm going to explain you exactly why. For one, miniature food is actually pretty easy. Now, I mean, of course, it takes years to hone your skills. It does take some time to just like appreciate and evolve and improve, but it's easy to get something right fast, in the sense that you can make ugly miniature food, but it's still kind of cute. So that's something that is nice when you start out, because it's less frustrating. The second is the shapes basically are so easy, and the tricky thing with miniature food is to get the colors right and the textures right. So you kind of get rid of the overall shape. Of course, you need some kind of shape, but it's very basic shapes, and so your mind only has to focus on colors and textures, and that is a lot less to focus on when you start out. You don't need amateurs, and that is a huge bonus. If you're not a beginner, if you have some experience with sculpting, most sculptures need some kind of amateurs. It's not doable without it, and amateurs are kind of a pain to do. When you start with miniature food, no need of amateur. Most of it is fairly straightforward, fairly simple. Again, simple shapes, colors, textures. No amateurs. Simple. Another huge advantage. Miniatures are, well, miniatures, which means they're super fast to do. You can get a hyper-realistic cake once you know what you do in like 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. So in a day, you can easily make complex things in miniatures just because it's so tiny that you can move a lot faster. When you work on bigger things, it can take days, weeks, sometimes months. And that's okay when you already know yourself a bit and your style and you already have some skills. But when you're at the stage of developing and honing your skills, then quantity is more important than quality. It's kind of like a thing that you say in the art community, that the more things you do, the better you become. So it's not that easy. It's like you have to be mindful about it. You have to critically assess what you're doing, otherwise you're not going to improve. But when you can do something in 2 hours and then critically assess it, see what can be improved, and then the next 2 hours, bam, you're like improving it. then it's going to be a lot faster to grow as an artist and to have better skills than if you spend 1 month on a sculpture and then critically assess it and then another month. So yeah, starting to learn in miniature, and I think that's relevant for almost any technique, to be honest, is much faster because you get results fast, and so you can see fast what you've done wrong, what isn't working, and then act upon that. Now that I hopefully have you on board onto the miniature food mania, let's talk about tutorials and where to get them. So there have been countless books written on that matter for a long time. Many of those are not edited anymore and you can only get secondhand books. The first that springs to my mind, because it was the first that I used, was the one from Angie Scarr, something with market stall, miniature food and market stall. And it's not edited anymore, but you can find on occasion. I would say Angie Scarr is really the mother of most miniature food artists in the Western world, so not in Japan and in Asia, where I don't really know that as much, but it's a very different approach and technique. So in Asia, most miniaturists tend to use air-dry clay, and in the Western world, it's mostly polymer clay. Rough approximation, there are of course counterexamples. I hope you don't get mad about this. So Angie Scarr, she used polymer clay, and I would say she used the canning technique, a bit too much. I have some reservation about that, but it was a great basic. And you cannot take it from her. She was the mother of contemporary miniature art in the Western world. Now, the best miniature artists in food, in my opinion. So I'm really focusing on food in this video, because if you go into miniature artists in general, there are a lot more, of course. For me, the best unrivaled king of miniature food is a Japanese, Tomo Tanaka, also known as Nunu's house. And his work is just out of this world, really. It's just wonderful. And he wrote a few books. I have 2 of them. Unlike the books from Angie Scarr, which I gave away, I kept those from Tomo Tanaka because what he does are works of art and it's extremely precise, very skilled. He uses air-dry clay. And while his tutorial books are not that easy to understand because it's all in Japanese and sometimes you're kind of trying to double guess what it's about, it's still, I mean, I've never really used them as tutorial books, but they're beautiful to look at. And again, if you're starting out with air-dry clay, definitely look into him because I think he's the best and he's teaching about it. So why not check it out? Now, for me, I would say at least as good is Tanja Jensen, which you might know because she used to have a very active YouTube channel, SugarCharmShop. She's such a sweet girl, really a good friend. And her work is breathtaking and she has done a lot of tutorials about miniature food, so that's a great resource. I know from a fact that she never used other tutorials to work it out, so she was really adamant about that, to look at real life and try to figure out how to make it in miniature, and I've always admired that with her. I was probably less adamant about that. So yeah, so many videos still on YouTube, so you can check them out if you're interested. It's a great way to start. She has more than miniature food, but I would say that's always been her passion. And she stopped since then because YouTube has changed and not going to get into it. That's another great teacher to look into. The next one I want to talk about is Maive Ferrando. So she wrote a book last year about cakes and I recently got a copy from her, which kind of prompted this video, to be perfectly fair. I thought her book looked really gorgeous and I wanted to talk about it. She made a book solely on cakes. It's really for the sweet tooth. Cakes, in my opinion, are the things that are the easiest to master, and so I feel like, especially for beginner, having a book on how to make pastries and cakes and, you know, all that kind of sweet goods, it's going to be extremely satisfying to do because you're going to be able to manage something nice looking quite fast and you can improve fast again because miniatures, simple shape, etc. So I think it's a great book to start out with you know, sculpture. Now I teach as well, and I used to do a lot of miniature food tutorials again on my channel, so you can check them out. I also wrote a book myself about miniature food, and I remember when I wrote it, so it dates a bit, but when I wrote it, everyone was writing miniature food books, but it was always kind of like a copy of the Angie Scarr one. So anything about market stalls and, you know, fresh veggies and ingredients basically. And was like, I feel like the market was oversaturated with it. So I thought about doing a book on the theme of holiday foods, and that's what I did. So also because I really loved doing gingerbread houses at that time and kind of fit with the rest. This video was inspired by this book that I got from my friend Maive Ferrando. She also has a YouTube channel. I really liked her book. I thought it was beautiful, and I really wanted to make a useful video about it. So not just a book review, but yeah, talk about miniature food. And even though it's not as trendy as it used to be, I feel it's still an interesting way to learn how to sculpt. A very satisfying and a fun way. And yeah, I just wanted to share with my opinion about that on that topic. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, even though it's probably a bit different from what I usually do. Although I don't know, it's part of the process, you know? Every artist has phases in its life, and we all go through changes and evolve and periods of learning. And for me, miniature food was a period of learning polymer clay until I threw everything away and started anew. And now I'm using all kinds of clay that I never used before. But still, it started with miniature food. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe, and, you know, comment, share, do all that jazz, and maybe hit the notification button. Does that even help? Probably not. I post videos almost every Friday. I've been doing good for a few months. I hope I can manage and do it continuously and don't give up, which might happen. I do need holidays sometimes. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you found it useful, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!